exactly how this will go, but the short-term results that they've seen so far have shown what they said is a 90% protective effect.
And while the short-term results show the vaccine is 90% effective, Dr. Hines says this number could reduce as the pool of persons tested expands.
We have to bear in mind, however, that the number of persons who would have developed COVID and the cohort that they would have been compared with is still relatively small, and that as additional data comes out of that study, the actual percentage protection may change.
Dr. Hines says the long-term effectiveness of this vaccine is still unknown and notes that the Health Ministry will continue to maintain caution before deciding what this new development means for this country. Sonolala, TTT News.
In other regional news, with COVID-19 cases on the rise, so is domestic abuse among women and children. The Canadian High Commissioner to Jamaica, along with members of the Jamaicans for Justice organization, held a recent multimedia launch explaining new mechanisms where information can be more accessible and further ways of educating the public about these issues. Here's more.
The Canadian High Commission with advocacy group Jamaicans for Justice have launched a multimedia messaging campaign geared towards violence against women and children in the time of COVID-19. Canadian High Commissioner to Jamaica, Her Excellency Laurie Peters, highlighted that since the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a spike in violence against women, stressing that this kind of abuse is unacceptable.
The COVID-19 pandemic has increased the rates of gender-based violence. In this time of COVID, we need to remember what it feels like for those who literally bear the brunt of gender-based violence. And this is why today is important. The launch of this multimedia campaign must serve as a reminder that gender-based violence in any form is not acceptable.
She added that harmful behaviors that are perceived to be social norms are a contributing factor to domestic abuse that can prove to be a barrier in creating reform to reduce gender-based violence.
Changing these social norms is one of the most difficult aspects of reducing gender-based violence. Uncovering and dismantling harmful norms that explicitly or implicitly sanction violence against women and children, this needs to be seriously addressed if we hope to engender significant change.
Meanwhile, Executive Director for Jamaicans for Justice, Rajay Malcolm, outlined the services that will be beneficial to individuals provided by the multimedia campaign.
And so as of today, those products will be available on television. You may see them scrolling through on social media online, and prompts for several discussions that we seek to have. But an added bonus of this campaign that we didn't think we were going to be able to achieve what we have is we've produced educational material via short film that we hope to provide as resources for persons doing gender-based violence work in communities, in schools, in different settings, to start conversations that we need to have both online and in person.
Javine McLean, CVM Live.
On the international scene, U.S. President Donald Trump has fired his defense secretary Mark Esper over Twitter, adding to the political chaos and deadlock stemming from the U.S. elections. Trump has refused to concede defeat, and now Attorney General William Barr has authorized federal prosecutors to look into allegations of voting irregularities. But President-elect Joe Biden has lost no time in putting his coronavirus task force in place as cases rise to more than 10 million in the country. Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher reports.
Out of sight in the White House for the moment, but still using his power as president, Donald Trump settling scores, sacking his defense secretary. Mark Esper finding out he'd been terminated by tweet. Esper, dubbed Yesper by the president, finally fell foul of the Oval Office in the summer. As racial justice protests swept American cities, the president considered putting troops on the street. Esper insisted that wasn't going to happen. The election is still on Donald Trump's mind, sending out a series of tweets about states he claims are in dispute. In the Senate, the Republican leader said the president was right not to concede right now.
President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
But his Democratic counterpart admitted he was worried where the president was taking the country.
Baseless claims by the president and his supporters that there's been widespread voter fraud and that the election was somehow rigged or stolen from President Trump. That kind of rhetoric is extremely dangerous.
Republicans say they're just at the start of the legal battle.
This election is not over.
And are pulling together evidence to put before the courts.
One, we do have a whistleblower, which I discussed earlier this week, who was in Detroit as an election worker, not as a Republican poll watcher, who under affidavit says that they were told to backdate ballots, that their supervisor came and they were there on November 4th. Ballots that came in with no date, they were told by the supervisor, backdate the ballots to November 2nd or November 3rd so they will count. So that has been submitted to the to the U.S. Attorney in the Eastern District of Michigan.
We haven't had to put it.
Attorney General William Barr has told prosecutors to investigate any substantial allegations of fraud before the results are verified. It's been seen by critics as a political move to give more credibility to unfounded allegations made by the president. Joe Biden is in no doubt, though. He's won, and he's already getting ready for day one. As America hit 10 million COVID cases, he announced his coronavirus task force, which will go to work straight away.
I will spare no effort to turn this pandemic around once we're sworn in on January 20th. To get our kids back to school safely, our businesses growing, and our economy running at full speed again. And to get an approved vaccine manufactured and distribute as quickly as possible to as many Americans as possible, free of charge. We'll follow the science.
Two more people who were at the President's election night event have tested positive for COVID. Cabinet Secretary Ben Carson and David Bosey, who is leading the legal efforts in the contested states. As America faces a spike in cases, Vice President Mike Pence, who leads the administration's coronavirus task force, is heading to Florida for 5 days on vacation. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Bolivia's exiled former president Evo Morales crossed the border back into Bolivia on Monday. He fled 1 year ago after violent protests and accusations of electoral fraud. Al Jazeera's Teresa Bo reports.
Triumphant. That's how Evo Morales returned to Bolivia on Monday after a year in exile in Argentina. He traveled to the city of La Quiaca, right at the border between the two South American nations.
I always knew I was going to return, but not as fast. Something historical. Thanks to the unity of the Bolivian people, my brothers and sisters, history repeats itself. A fight for life, dignity, peace and dignity.
Morales was forced to leave Bolivia last year after violence followed a presidential election that, according to the Organization of American States, were filled with irregularities. The armed forces asked him to resign. Morales fled first to Mexico and then came to Argentina. Once here, he became the campaign manager of Bolivia's movement towards socialism party that won the elections last month. Bolivia's new president, Luis Arce, was inaugurated on Sunday. Morales crossed the border with Argentina's president, Alberto Fernández. He said Morales' return is an example to Latin America.
That's what Evo was, the real president that represented the heart of Bolivia. When these things in Bolivia were not allowed, as president, he did an impressive job. If there is one place in Latin America where the social and economic structures have changed, that place is Bolivia. They did take care of the deficit, development, equality, and justice.
Morales will be traveling with an 800-vehicle caravan around Bolivia's coca-growing regions in the next few days.
Evo Morales is a divisive figure in Bolivia, and while there are millions who love him and are thankful for the rights they gained while he was in office, there are others who claim he was authoritarian and criticize his attempt to hold on to power despite losing a referendum that prevented him from seeking a fourth term.
But the election of Luis Arce shows there are millions who believe Evo Morales changed Bolivia for the good. Rural and indigenous populations started to have a say in the country's future while he was in office. Their vote is what allowed Evo Morales to come back. Teresa Bo, Al Jazeera, Buenos Aires.
And now for the weather. Present weather shows overcast skies with light showers. A moderate breeze of 70 miles per hour is moving in an easterly direction. Current temperature is 24 degrees Celsius, that's 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Seas are reaching 4 to 6 feet. Small craft operators should exercise caution mainly for reduced visibilities in heavier showers. Due to the persistent rain that is forecast, along with some moderate to heavy showers possible, conditions would be conducive for flash flooding. Residents are advised to exercise extreme caution in areas that are known for street flooding and rockfall, such as the Old Road Bay area, and areas that are known for flash flooding, including the Guts. Sunset today will be at 5:36 p.m. and the sun is expected to rise tomorrow at 6:14 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am your presenter, Shaira Flanders. Have a good one.